So a little bit different this week. I've decided to take on repainting this squig to make him a bit better, basically. So I'm going to show you how I went from this to this. So I'm going to start off, most of it's going to be done with these two sponges really. I'm going to start by base coating him with just a mid-red colour. I'm going to paint that all over the main body. I could have spent a bit of time sanding down all the layer lines, but I didn't bother. I go for a slightly brighter red over the top of that, highlighting all the raised areas. I'm not letting the paint fully dry between coats so it blends together a bit better. So after this layer's finished, I go for kind of a brighter orangey red, just again even lighter, just over most of the raised areas. And then finally after that's done, I go for a real orangey red, just highlighting certain areas over the model. Just kind of bony protrusions, the nose, round the lips, just to highlight those areas all a bit more. So once I've added a few layers onto it, I've ended up with something that looks a bit like this. I'm now going to take quite a dark purple colour and I'm going to go around the darker recesses around the eyes. It doesn't really matter if I cover the yellow because I'm going to be repainting them anyway. And once I'm done with the eyes, I'm actually going to use the same purple colour to do the whole of the inside of the mouth. So the interior of the mouth is going to stay quite dark. The gums I am going to lighten up with some pinky colours. So as you can see, the purple's darkened down quite a bit when it's drying. I then go back into the eyes again to highlight the yellow. So I'm just concentrating on the centre, not trying to get it too near to the edges. And I repeat that with both eyes. So you get something that looks a bit like this. The gums I have gone ahead and coloured a pink colour. So that's where I am just now. There's a beige on the teeth. And I'm going to start doing some washes now. So dark brown wash over all the bony bits, so that's teeth and nails. Once I'm finished that, I'm going to do quite a heavy dark purple over the interior of the mouth. So it's just to darken down those recesses even more. That's how it looks at this stage. The gums I'm going to do for kind of a pinky red colour, so it'll bring a bit more life to it. So I just go over all of the gums. I also paint the tongue in this colour as well. And the eyes, I'm actually going to go over them in red. So they've got a slightly bloodshot look. Once I've finished actually painting the red on, I'm then going to go back into it again with a sponge. And I'm going to dab off some of the red on the centres so it brings up the yellow again. You end up with something that looks a bit like this once it's all dried. So next stage of this, the entire body is going to get a red wash. I put this on quite thick and quite watery, so it does run a couple of places, but I managed to catch all the runs before they do any damage going to any of the other bits I painted. Once that wash is done, this is how he looks. So there are some quite heavy mould lines on the bottom, but they're going to be hidden underneath. So my next stage, I'm going to do a little bit of dry brushing, so I'm going to do some beigey colours over the teeth. And I do go in and do a little bit of dry brushing again over the face area, just to bring back some of that detail. And that's it with the teeth dry brushed. And then I'm actually going to go in and I'm going to stipple some yellow paint onto the centre of the eyes again. I'm stippling it on so it becomes a bit more blended, so you're not just going to get a solid lump of colour. So as you can see, I am using my sponge again to bring back some of the lighter colours to the centre of the face. And I do go around a couple of bits of the lips and a couple of the bony protrusions along the body. Up next, I've bought this UV resin ages ago, haven't really used it that much, so I thought I'd make more use of it. So I'm going to do the eyes with the UV resin. I'm just going to put a couple of drips in, let it move about, and then use the lamp to cure it. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm actually going to varnish the entirety of the inside of the mouth, so it doesn't really matter if it drips because that's all going to be spread about. So he's going to have a real wet mouth. Every model deserves a base, so I'm going to use this big round cake board. I think it looks about the right size. I'm going to start by slapping on some of my splooge. If you watch, I can't remember which previous video it was, I showed you how to make it. It's basically filler mixed with some Mod Podge and some black paint. So spread a big lump of that on it. This is just actually the first coat just to cover to give me something good to work off of. Then I'm going to take an old piece of cardboard and I'm going to use that just to spread it out to cover the whole of the base. You don't have to be precise with this, it doesn't have to be smooth. I did also press our little guy into the base, so there's a couple of footprints there, so I had a rough idea where he was. And this is it when it's dried. Dries nice and hard, and there should be minimal cracking with it if you leave it long enough. Next thing to add a bit of detail, I got some of these fake bullets. They're just plastic, so they're going to be really easy to cut. So I just really want them to represent bullet casings, so I'm going to take the bullet tip off. So I'm just left with the case at the back. Once those are all done, I'm going to take my sanding rod and give the mold lines a bit of a sand down, just to smooth it out a little bit. I do end up cutting one of them at an angle to make them look a bit more interesting as well, so they're not all just uniform. So yeah, that's them all sanded down, and the next stage is just to take the base back again, and I'm just going to use super glue to glue them down. Add a bit more super glue around the base just to make sure it's nice and solid. And then I repeat that with the other 3 bullets. The other thing I made was this little bit of I-beam, not to scale or anything, but just to put a bit of interest on it. To reinforce the joints, I'm actually going to put some super glue down them. And then I'm going to sprinkle on. I say sprinkle, I actually pour too much on at the start. Sprinkle on a little bit of bicarbonate of soda. That reacts with the super glue, and it gives you quite a nice curved joint to the edge of it, so it looks like a welded seam down it. So I just repeat that with other joints, and then I glue that down as well, and then I go back to my splooge and add some more of that just to build up roundabout, make sure everything's secured in place. The next step for the base, I'm actually going to take a damp sponge and I'm just going to press down, so it gives you quite a nice surface texture, and it also blends it all in, so you don't see any kind of tool lines or anything. And then leave that for even longer to dry off. So that's it completed. And the next stage, I just gave it a prime with some brown spray paint. I think I just picked that one up from Halford's. And then I'm going to do some dry brushing on it. So really big brush and just go to town with some browns. So I use a total of I think 4 different browns. One of them is a bit of a different shade than this, and the other 2 are progressively lighter, just to highlight. And just be really random, really haphazard. Make sure you don't have any brush lines or anything, because this was a really cheap synthetic brush, so it leaves lines behind. And yeah, once again, I'm not allowing the paint to dry between coats, so it kind of merges in, blends into each other. Whereas if you left it to dry, you'd have distinct coats on it. And like I say, just be really haphazard, you don't want a uniform look overall. So that's dry brushing of the base finished. I'm next going to paint the bullet casings. I'm just actually just going to use a brass colour for this. I do a bit of weathering on them later on, but essentially this is a one coat of this brass colour. I'm going to add some rust effect to the little bit of I-beam there. Again, just be really haphazard, go for edges, go for certain like corners and things like that. Places where rust would normally form on things. I use a couple of different oranges on this, and I do go back into it again with a brown as well, just to darken down some of the areas. Then the only other thing I do with the I-beam is I use a dark metallic silver colour just to very light dry brush over some of the edges, some of the raised bits, just to show off the edging a little bit. So yeah, I use this quite light green colour. I just put some of it on the bullet casings, and then I simply sponge some of it down, so you get quite a nice kind of dirty verdigris kind of effect on the brass, which I ended up actually really happy with. And then the only other thing I did to the base was I gave it a black wash over all of it, just to tie all the colour in. And then put on a little bit of glue because I thought it was looking a bit drab and brown. So let's go for some static grass. So once I'm happy with the placement of all the glue, I'm just going to use a brush to spread it out a little bit. And I don't have any fancy static grass applicators or anything, so I'm simply just going to use my hands. So yeah, take your static grass, take a big clump of it, sprinkle it on, and just rinse and repeat for everything. So before this actually dries, that's the point I tend to tip off my static grass, because it gets rid of a lot of the stuff that's lying on there. It also brings a lot of the clumps up a little bit, so they do stand up. Another good tip as well, if you can't afford a static grass applicator, get a balloon, blow it up, rub it on your jumper or t-shirt, and then pull that across the top, and that'll actually raise things up. So a really cheap way to get static grass to stand up. And then the reason I used a bit of paper was so I can just stick it back in a tub and reuse this. I've had this static grass for, I was scared to think how many years I've actually been reusing this one tub of static grass, but very long time. So that's essentially the finished base. I'm going to use a mix of water and PVA just in a spray bottle, just to seal in all the grass areas. It helps just bind them down a bit more. And that's the base done. So I can go back to doing some bits with my little friend. So I've actually decided, because he's got such a wet mouth, let's get some drool on the go. So I'm actually just going to use a bit of plastic, draw out some lines with the UV resin, I actually did quite a lot of these, probably more than I actually needed to. And then you just need to cure that. Do a variety of different sizes and shapes, so you've got quite a lot to choose from. And then I'm just going to place them all willy-nilly. So I'm going to have a couple of big drips at the bottom. Again, stick it on with a little bit of UV resin. I did let this run so it looked a bit more natural with other drips and things forming through it. And then just use the light to cure it. And I also wanted some kind of drool strings going between the teeth, so a little bit of UV resin on the bottom and top. Cure that in place. And then I actually drip some more down it to blend it in. And that's his nice, wet, drooly mouth. So let's have a look at the... Oh. Just give me a minute, please. Sorry about that, but I actually realised that the little bit of paper that I normally use in the back was not big enough, so I had to go out and get something a little bit bigger. So I'm actually really happy with how he's turned out. Like the details, like the bullets and everything. The drool, I've never actually attempted that before, so I think that actually looked really good. And I do think he looks a little bit better from how he looked than when I actually got my hands on him. So yeah, what do you think? Think he looked well? And just like to say, I'm really sorry I've been so quiet recently. I was really ill for a number of weeks, and then Subnautica 2 came out, so I got a little bit distracted with that as well during my recuperation. But I'm back now, and hopefully we'll be back to our regular Fallout content next week. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.